Hold on a bit.
Yo,
Okay.
the aging thing is happening, right? So
Be Real it's an app where it's like Snapchat,
okay,
but it gives you a notification of when you can take a picture and it's up for 24 hours. So everyone gets notified around the same time. Like right now, take a picture and
okay,
it's the idea that you're putting up like a raw, unfiltered picture in the moment on the spot.
okay.
And that's what
So
that is.
just like when I Google it, the first thing
Yeah.
is what you're saying. The
Yeah,
second
yeah,
thing is the rapper from Cypress Hill. So like
yeah.
that's how I'm aging
Yeah,
myself. So when you're like be real, I'm like, oh, be real. Anyways,
the
whatever.
way you said it made it seem like it's a person. I was like, I don't think we're talking about the same thing.
For sure. To be honest, Darian, I was like catching up on your podcast. I'm like, does your audience want to hear from this like square, right? Like just because like
No,
you've
yeah,
been given a platform for, you know, people who have been marginalized from science historically, right? And like
mhm.
I don't want to like take space, right?
Nah,
And
not
but
at all.
anyways.
Not at all. One, I got a lot of feedback that people like me bringing people that I personally know
Hmm.
because they've said that like we can sense the friendship. I knew that it would be very important for you to come on because you're starting out your career as a PI, and I think people have this idea that like all PIs are scary, intimidating. Y'all are under a lot of stress, um and I want to kind of like break that mold and show that like people like you, PIs are cool. Like
For
you
sure. I mean,
can.
I appreciate it, man, because like also like I'm not a small dude either, right? So like I'm a husky gentleman and like there's even when like I first met you and stuff like that in
Mhm.
our previous institution, just kind of trying to how do I send signals that I'm
An
inclusive,
ally.
right? An ally, right? Without
Yeah.
like coming to you be like, you can
Like
talk to me kind of thing.
Darian, I sense your accent. I know what you are. That's what
Man,
my boyfriend
I
always.
hope you're gonna get me to code switch or something. I'm gonna be like, anyways.
Okay, let's. I want to introduce you.
All right, cool,
Hello,
cool.
everyone, and welcome back to another lovely episode of Scientifically Speaking. Holy moly, my guest today, we go way back, and by way back, this is probably like 2017, 2018. We have Dr. Paul Marcogliese, who is currently an assistant professor at the University of who? I should have asked you how to pronounce it. Manitoba?
Yes, perfect.
Oh, watch. I'm actually from Manitoba, actually. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think I knew that. There's some statues around here, like dedicated. Area.
Yeah. Dr. Paul Marcogliese, who is an assistant professor at the University of Manitoba, Department of Biochemistry and Medical Genetics in Winnipeg, Canada. Wow. So how long have you been a PI for?
Well, I started in June of this summer, so only for about 4 or 5 months now, right?
You're a youngin. You're a
I am a
youngin.
youngin.
Oh
And
my
yeah,
gosh.
so I've returned from 6 years in like the heat of Houston to now coming back to my home country of Canada. And
Yeah,
I
you
did not
did.
miss the cold. It's already snowing here.
Oh, okay. So recently, or not recently, well, now, like in Houston, it's in the 40s, 40s, 50s. It's too
That's pretty
cold
cool.
for me. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's too cold for me. Also, I realized I meant Fahrenheit.
Yes. I figured that because I'm getting back to my Celsius and we're at minus 20 Celsius. You know the minus 20 freezer? So
Yes. So,
that that's what
uh,
it is.
I think before I was a research technician, I didn't really understand. I didn't understand like the degrees in Celsius,
Mhm.
but now I get a sense of it
Yeah.
because obviously the difference in the metric system in science or the different systems in science. So now 40 degrees Celsius is really hot.
Oh,
It's
for
like
sure.
it's like 100 degrees Fahrenheit, I think, right?
I
90.
don't remember exactly, but I think they meet. Where do they meet? They meet at like negative 40. They're the same. something like that. I could be totally wrong. I'm your first PI, and I'm just like putting out whatever. I
No,
can't remember.
I think that's a good representation of what new PIs are like. Y'all are just all over the place.
We are, and we know a lot about a little, right? So like, this is the main thing. Is like, now I'm training. Like, I took on 5 trainees to start in
Yes.
September, and by the way, the 3 full-timers, they all know you. Like, they all follow you, and they're all
Really?
like, they all are like giddy about me being on this. So this is wild, like,
What?
for them. Yeah. So like that, just to show you how big and how far you've come, Darian. It's just like
Holy.
crazy.
Okay, so everyone, Paul literally was here since the very beginning of Lab Shenanigans. When I
Yeah.
started out my channel, it was in our previous lab. Well, my previous lab, my previous PI was at the time was I think a postdoc in your previous PI's lab. And I was just under immense pressure and stress. Well, I feel like everyone was in that lab. It's just high productivity of just work, 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 work. And I think we're just all so much under a lot of stress. And so, since I was my previous PI's only research technician, there was a lot of responsibility put on me. I was just so stressed, and I just turned to social media. And honestly, it started out as a Finsta of just me posting dumb science videos, content, and it
Oh,
just
I
grew over
remember.
time.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned on a previous podcast that I was listening to. Like, I felt very privileged that you shared like that, even like your previous stuff, the drag account, and like all that stuff. It's really cool,
Yeah,
right? Like, and then
yeah,
and then your first few videos were just like for this science Finsta were just like hilarious, and you kind of like blew up within our institution, and then it just kind of went from there, right?
yeah, exactly, exactly. The funny thing is, I try to keep it on the down low. I didn't want anyone to know because I think that the idea with a Finsta is that it's supposed to be private. Not a lot of
Mhm,
people are supposed to know about it, but
mhm.
it just grew, and I was always afraid of people thinking, "Oh my gosh, like Darren is just fooling around. He's just joking around," you know?
So this is legit because like, oh well, how come you're not doing science if you're making these videos? But like, people
Yeah,
don't realize that most of science are 10-minute incubation here, 30-minute incubation here, an hour incubation here. Like, there's only
exactly.
so much like literature reading you can squeeze in between steps of like a scientific protocol or recipe, right? So like,
Right.
and plus, you were physically there like till midnight, like almost every night or past that, right? Like, you
Yeah.
were working, you were
That,
there.
yeah. I was always afraid that like, yeah, so that I think because my previous PI's office was so far from my like bench,
Hmm.
I just always wanted to make sure that every time they walked by that they could see that I'm actually doing
Yeah,
experiments, you know? And
for
plus,
sure.
all my videos are always late at night when everyone was gone. I wanted to make sure that when I was in lab during the daytime, like I was really productive doing my work. And then at night, before I left lab, let me just make a quick 5-10 minute video.
Yeah.
And bam, just throw it out there. And I think you were one of the first people to find my videos, and I forgot his name.
Oh, Locke.
Locke, yes, yes. And you and Locke were one of the first people to actually
Yeah.
find my videos. And Zach.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I was so nervous too. I was scared
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
back then in that lab, I was so shy and awkward, and I just didn't talk to anybody. If anything, like you were the only person that I really talked to. You, Hadeen, Locke, not even Thomas. Thomas sat right behind me in my bay.
Which was
And
weird. I thought like y'all would connect at some point, but
well, we talked, I think, towards the end, when my former PI just got the new lab space. So as we were like transitioning out of the lab, that's when I started to open up a bit. But I was just really shy and
yeah,
really awkward, and I was really intimidated of just everyone because everyone there was incredibly smart. And I think you were one of the people where I was like, okay, you're like really smart, but really chill and understanding. And also, because you worked with my former PI a lot, you kind of knew how they were. And so I often vented to you about certain things, and you were very understanding and you saw both sides. That was very helpful for me to cope with what was going on, you know.
For sure. I'm glad it could help. Obviously, from my perspective, I came from like doing my PhD in Canada, do a postdoc, and the whole point was publish, 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 put out this science, work, work,
Yeah.
work, get that reference letter, right? Our lives
Hmm.
are like we survive on publishing, but we also survive on our PI's reference letter. And that's what gives them so much power, right, over us,
Yeah.
right? Because even if they're toxic and, typically they are to some degree, right? We can all agree
Yeah.
on something. So it's like, how do we how do we manage like work-life balance and like attaining the goals we want and keeping this person happy without like essentially selling your soul or like doing stuff you don't want to be doing, right? So
Right.
it's
Well,
uh it's complicated.
I feel like we both went through similar struggles and we were both under immense pressure to just keep our PIs happy.
Yeah,
Whereas my former PI was more like, I don't know how to explain it, very secretive, would have an ulterior motive for everything,
like
you know?
manipulative basically, like of
Yeah, yeah, I guess so. It would, for example, after I left, there was a research tech that took my position. Let's call them Tommy. At this point, my former PI was their eyes locked on them because there are certain things that had happened in that lab during my time there, and so certain higher ups were keeping a close eye on my former PI, and pretty much all research or all non-exempt employees like research techs were only supposed to work 40 hours. And if they worked overtime, they had to get, paid overtime. But they would mask that and say, oh, well, I talked to the department head and they said, that it's unfair that people like you want to get a lot of experience and training. And so they understand that you have to work overtime and that it's not fair that you have to get paid more because when you're a grad student, there's a stipend and, you don't get paid more if you work more. And so you can kind of like read between the lines of what they're wanting to do. And so I remember Tommy, this is when I was like long gone out of the lab.
mhm.
Tommy just like FaceTime me out of frustration and said, like, I cannot believe they're doing this. Like, how are you handling this? And I told them, I was like, dude, you gotta get out. You gotta get
Yeah.
out. They reminded me so much of myself when I first started in that lab, where we just needed to please our PI. I don't know how their situation was, but I had applied to so many research tech positions. This is like the only one that I like was actually able to like land a job in,
Mhm.
and I didn't want to go through the whole process again. And I just felt like, okay, well, I worked hard to get here.
Mhm.
Let me just suck it up. Let me just continue. Let me just stay.
Suck it up, persevere, be tenacious, all that like stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
But everyone, if you see yellow, red flags, you should address them early on
Yeah.
or get out. Get out. That is my biggest
For
advice.
sure. For sure. And I mean, there's something like just on the other side, Darian,
Yeah.
like when you're starting PI, we're actually not trained to be PIs. PIs are people
Yeah.
managers, project managers. We're trained
Mm-hmm.
to be bench scientists, right?
Yep.
But then
Yep.
all of
Yep.
a sudden, okay, now like you're such a good scientist. Now go like run a lab and tell other people what to do. And just because you're a great scientist doesn't necessarily make you a great PI, right? So
That
like
is so true. Yeah, because my former PI, literally one of the smartest people I know
for sure, agreed.
outside of lab,
Mm.
we get along so well, and our personalities surprisingly are so similar. And I think that's how I was able to land the job so quickly because during my interview, we just connected. I guess I didn't see their leadership, their managing style until we started moving to the new lab space. And so, definitely during my time when we were like in the same lab before my PI became a PI, that was probably the period where I felt very close with my PI, and I was so passionate about this project where I really didn't mind,
Mm.
staying late at night because it genuinely was fun for me. I really enjoyed it. But yeah, I
That's
totally
awesome.
agree. I totally agree that once you become a PI, you're kind of like all these different responsibilities are thrusted upon you. you have to learn how to mentor
I
so many trainees.
and
You have
just
to attend
handle it
meetings.
like so many meetings, everything. And what's funny is my previous PI was like, oh, at the beginning, your first 3 to 5 years, you're your own best postdoc. You got to be on the bench. But my day is spent meetings, training other, like I don't have like, so if you
Yeah.
want me on the bench, I need to basically, disregard work-life balance and like come
Yeah.
at night and work on the bench, right?
Yeah.
The only thing else is like it is normal, like I see it a lot with new PIs to have like high turnover rates, particularly in the first couple of years. They're kind of getting their footing for mentoring, and then also sometimes like they don't get a lot of applicants for different positions, so they just kind
Yeah.
of take. Not that you were one of those because you were stellar, Darian. Like your organization, your like ability to get so much in vivo data, like a bulk of in vivo data
Oh,
for
thank
that lab.
you.
Like anyway, and even I remember your ending sort of you gave a presentation near the end
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
really awesome. Um,
Thank you.
so, but my point is that for it's basically normal for like not necessarily toxic reasons. There is usually high turnover, just figuring out
Yeah.
like who are the people that are going to stay longer term, who like if the PI figuring out their like mentoring style, etc.
Yeah.
But obviously with your old PI, that was the turnover was to an extreme
Oh,
point,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
I
like
think
beyond normal.
in the span of 2 years, I think at least 5 people had left. I think this is why I valued spending time with you so much. You do a good job of speaking for both sides. And sometimes in the moment when I'm just so caught up with like my emotions and there's just so much rage and sadness,
Yeah.
you're able to give the other person's perspective and allow me to like put myself in their shoes and kind of understand where they're coming from.
I think the problem I see like in academia and biomedical science is obviously there's this pressure and to publish, right? And
Oh yeah.
our careers are made on publishing, and it's not just the pressure on the PI, it's pressure on postdocs and down this hierarchy, right? This old school
Yeah.
pyramid of power. But like we have to ask ourselves, what are we really doing here? Like what is the point of running a lab
Hmm.
beyond just doing research? Because at the end of the day, if the goal is to just find positive results and put that out, it's just asking for problems. That's why we want more transparent, open science, right? Publishing
Yeah.
negative results, etc., and like less of this emphasis on like impact factors of journals, etc.
Yes.
So if it becomes the question is, what are we really doing in science? We want to know the truth. We want to get a better approximation of reality, right? That's
Hmm.
the goal. And then we don't do it alone because it's not like hundreds of years ago when, you could do it alone because there wasn't really the like big equipment to do it.
Right.
Now we do it in teams beyond even just our own labs.
Yeah.
And the whole point of the academic like endeavor for your grad students and even for techs or anybody in your lab is mentorship, is teaching it, right? So like
Right.
at the end of the day, the real thing is like don't be an asshole if you're a PI, right? Like regardless of whatever we're talking about. But like my goal as a PI, the publications will come if
Hmm.
people in my lab are happy, want to be in the lab, they enjoy
Hmm.
being in the lab, they enjoy learning different things,
Yep.
different
Yep. Yep.
techniques, applying their knowledge. The data will come naturally after that, as opposed to just kind of
Hands down.
this approach that's just like get the data, right?
Hands down. Hands. One of the great things about this lab is that it's the current lab that I'm in. It's
So
the
yeah,
complete
you're
opposite
okay.
of my former lab.
Yeah.
And I think my current PI understands me so well is because during his either PhD or his postdoc, he went through what I went through. And he's just so understanding where
That's awesome.
everyone in this lab is already self-motivated. He's not pushing anyone to get any results. Everyone, I mean, he's under a lot of stress, obviously by like,
Yeah.
grants and stuff, but he doesn't show that stress or he doesn't put it on to us. And everyone here, I think he's just selected the right group of people where we're all um, very self-motivated and we all motivate each other to do even better and to get data.
That's awesome to hear. So are you gonna do like a PhD in this lab?
I was thinking about it
Yeah.
for the longest time, and I mentioned it a couple of times in my early episodes on the
Mm.
podcast.
Yeah.
Uh, but every time I come crawling back and wanting to do a PhD, new opportunities come. A huge part of me just tells me, do both. You got to do
For
both.
sure.
But
But is this the type of PI that could be flexible around these opportunities you're getting?
yes, super. He's very supportive. He actually set up a meeting with me and what's his name? Oh my gosh. YouTuber. His name is Derek. Veritasium. Veritasium.
Oh, wow. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely heard.
and really chill guy, really amazing guy. And we had an hour-long talk about just like my future career, and I got some advice from him. And he's like, honestly, dude, like with what you're wanting to do, you really don't need a PhD.
Agreed.
And I'm like, okay, yeah. But similar to how like my undergrad, I didn't have to pursue a theater degree. I just wanted to for the heck of it.
Mhm.
It was
Yeah,
so fun. It was stressful because I had to double major, but I genuinely enjoyed having that amount of workload on my shoulders and being able to balance it out. And in the end, my theater degree has helped me in so many ways. And so I think like a PhD would be similar in that aspect where I don't have to get a PhD, but I want to because I want the rigorous training. I want to learn more. And who knows, like having a PhD under my belt can help me in other areas in life. At the
for
same
sure.
time, I know that if I were to go into grad school, I would want to put my all into it, and I don't want to divide my attention because I know how stressful
Yeah.
grad school can be. Seeing
I
other
mean,
PhD students,
it's important that you're having this kind of like hesitation in the sense that like it is a rigorous endeavor, right? But
right?
from my perspective, and I guess it's a matter of what you want to do long term, and obviously you're doing well in all these other aspects with these other opportunities. But the question is, I didn't know was going to be a PI when I started grad school. Like
Uh-huh.
it was, if you think about it, 7% of postdocs, and this is an older number, become PIs. So a lot of us don't, don't even do postdocs. So many people
Yeah.
with PhDs don't become PIs. That being said, obviously we need more people like you, Darian, leading labs. So like obviously a PhD is a way on the road to
Mm.
get there. But if you don't want it, you don't want it, right? Like don't let me like change that. I
Yeah.
let's put it this way, Darian, no matter what you do, you'll excel at it because that's just what you do. But you just need to find out what you
Stop gassing me up,
I am
Paul.
gonna
You're
guess.
making me blush. Oh my gosh.
I remember during my PhD we had two Korean like postdocs and
Uh-huh.
they like challenged two of us to like
Mm.
I think it was their spiciest, but I didn't even like I think I ate half, but like I knew it was gonna be really bad. So like
Mm-hmm.
I was drinking something like 2 liters of water and they said that like I like it wasn't fair that I drank that so much water and I should have to deal with the consequences
Oh
of just
no. As we all know, water is polar, and capsaicin, which is the main thing that makes things spicy,
yeah,
is non-polar. So the best thing to do is drink milk, or
yeah.
I've even read stories of people gargling their tongue with oil, like vegetable oil or
Yeah,
olive
that makes
oil.
sense.
Here's another way to, I guess, neutralize it: adding cheese
Yeah.
to it. So that's what I do.
Or
Like I
like
want to.
yogurt or something might work, right?
Yeah, but like I add it in the ramen
In
noodles.
oh in
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So like I like this. I like the noodle, but sometimes it gets too spicy. I love the flavor, but sometimes it's too spicy. So I'll add cheese to kind of like neutralize the spiciness, because
Sure.
cheese, dairy, fat, non-polar, all that. Yeah.
We definitely miss the food in Houston though. Like
Oh
there's
yeah.
so many
Everyone
options.
sleeps on the food in Houston. Every time I'm like, y'all need to go to Chinatown. Y'all need to do this. We have the best crawfish. There is no debate. It is a fact. It's
I
not
mean,
scientifically proven, but it is Darien approved. So
there's only two things wrong with Houston/Texas food. One, more isn't always better, right? So sometimes it's like,
true.
oh, more queso, more whatever, and it just drowns whatever you're cooking
Yeah.
anyway. There's some things that some Houston restaurants tend to do that. I'm just like, no, like
This is the part where I cancel you for trash talking Houston. Never come back. We don't want you back here anyway.
Oh, so my city, Winnipeg. So Winnie the Pooh, that's where
Winnie
the name
Pooh,
was from.
you're lying.
I'm not lying, man. Look it up. Look it
Bible.
up. Bible. So it was like
Oh,
basically the Canadian forces in like one of the world wars or I can't remember. I think it was the first one. They like there was like a something about a bear named Winnie. Like it was in the UK or something, and A. A. Milner. I might even be getting the name wrong, but who wrote Winnie the Pooh? But anyway, the name came from Winnipeg because the Canadian forces who were there were from
that
Winnipeg and named the bear or something.
I feel
Anyway,
like that makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
At the same time, I'm so gullible. If you like made up the whole story on the spot, I believe you. You won. You said you're taking 5 trainees right now.
Yeah, so it was a
That is a
little bit.
lot.
Yeah, a lot of my colleagues were like, "What are you doing?" So two of them are called honors students, so they're only really around like, 5 to 10 hours a week. So
Are they
they're like,
like undergrads, high school
yeah, so
students?
they're undergrad doing like a fourth year project, but they have other courses going on, so like they're not
Gotcha,
really
gotcha.
that involved. And then I have
Yeah,
one
yeah.
master's student, and
Wow.
then two co-op students, which are undergrads as well. I have
Hmm.
another master's student starting in January and a couple more next year. But I'm really just dealing with like three right now. It's been awesome. We had like a lab bowling night. I'm trying,
Oh,
I'm putting like anonymous like idea concern boards. Like I'm kind of going a little bit all out, like to basically they're well aware that like
yeah.
I've been very transparent. Like
I love
I wasn't
that.
trained for this, right? Like help me out
Yeah.
here if there's things that you think we should do better.
I
And
love that about you. That's the difference between how you're managing the lab and
Mhm,
compared to like my previous PI, where
mhm.
I think maybe the idea of power and authority got to their head, where they never showed any signs of vulnerability or like transparency. And it was always, I'm the PI, you're the research tech. Like whatever I say is the law.
Yeah,
My PI now is always very transparent and very honest with us. And I think being vulnerable and honest goes a longer way than trying to create a wall, you know?
yeah, no,
And
totally.
I think what you're doing is amazing. And I think it's healthy for the lab too, that they can always
Yeah,
come to you if there is something that's bothering them. Whereas I was too scared. I held a lot back in my old lab until one day towards the very end. I don't want to say it too much, but I think it just got very messy in the very end.
for sure. I mean, from what I remember, I was
Yeah.
a little annoyed at HR because from what I remember, I kind of I get all my dates mixed up of what
Yeah,
happened,
yeah.
but like they they didn't really like protect you the way that HR is supposed to.
No. At the end of the day, HR is there to protect the institution,
Hmm.
protect the
I
image
get it.
of the institution.
Yeah.
So naively, I trusted HR
Yeah.
in the middle of their whole investigation. That's when I realized, oh my gosh, like, I think I messed up.
You're thinking in hindsight now, right? Amazing choice, right?
And so, yeah. Oh my gosh, I forgot where I was going with this.
I don't know. I mean,
Wait, no.
HR protecting the
was,
PIs.
oh, dang. I know by the time when I listen to this and edit, I'll be like, oh my gosh, Darren, you're so stupid. You're going to talk about this. And then you lost your train of thought.
No, no, I interrupted.
No,
Typical me.
no. Yeah, actually, that's why you're a terrible PI.
I am. I am. I'm like, I'm secretly gonna flip the switch, flip mode on them, and like just like totally become talk. No, no, no. But no, it's great. However, like that being said, like on the flip side, as a PI, like I I can't have the expectations that my
Mhm.
XPIs like
Yeah,
had, right? Like science will happen at a slower pace. It is what
right.
it is, right? So like things will take time, but it's like relationship building. It's like trying to be like a good leader, trying to like help them be leaders and stuff. And there's a whole like
Hmm.
one thing, you know, I kind one thing we need to talk about is EDI, right? Like I'm another white man getting a PI position, right? And when I applied in the
Uh-huh.
fall of 2021, I applied to 57 places. And that's actually not that much because the pandemic severely like made it so there was less positions to apply to. Most seasons, like in the fall, people apply to like 100. So I applied to like everything. And
Yeah.
of course, I'd hear murmurs from like other white dudes like, oh, they, it's going to be so hard. They're not going to hire us anymore. Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
I did fine. I had like 5 or 6 interview invites. Like I
Well,
did
then again,
totally
you did
fine.
amazing work.
No, I mean like I was sort of competitive. But my point is like it's really important to me. So I should shout out Winnipeg a bit more. So this place is kind of historical for Canada. It's where the first treaty was signed with the Indigenous folks in the area. So it's like
Mm.
Treaty One territory. Okay.
Oh, come on,
Um,
history. I did not know any
yeah.
of this. Wow.
So
Okay.
like 20% of the city is Indigenous. Like, so
Um,
it's there's a lot of First Nations here, and Métis, and I'm not naming them all, but anyways, it's a very diverse city. It's got a
uh-huh.
huge Filipino, Nigerian, and um oh, what else? Like anyway, it's a diverse city. Um, but the point I'm trying to make is just for new PIs,
Yeah.
if we can't, if it still seems to be that, like, obviously from my own self-interest, I wanted to be a PI. Yes, I'm
Right.
a cishet white male, but now the goal is like, well, how do I support and prop up people who don't look like me
Hmm.
to get high enough in the system if they so choose, right? Because not
Right.
everybody
Right.
wants to be a PI, right? So identifying individuals and propping them up, because again, if you look back at the science,
Hmm.
science shows that PIs don't tend to promote work from people from underrepresented backgrounds, right? So like
True.
knowing that and having an awareness, I need to like kind of overcompensate a bit to like show that that's fair
Hmm.
with other people that typically get the same amount of promotion, right?
Right. My thing
Anyway,
is go to
yeah,
Twitter. I think Twitter is a good place. Academic Twitter is a really good place to promote other people's work,
for sure.
At
And
the
again,
same
people are,
time,
yeah,
sometimes I can kind of with some lab Twitter accounts,
mhm,
I feel like I can kind of see through it where
for sure.
it's just for show,
For sure.
you
And so
know?
how do you bring authenticity, right? So like
Yeah.
um because this is what's so like Darian, like some of our grants, at least in Canada, and it's probably true in the States too, there are sections to write about diversity, equity, inclusion about your lab. And
Mm,
you're supposed to, it's not supposed to be like a list, well, I have this many this
right.
many whatever, because some of these things you're not even supposed to be able to tell, right? Like you're not
Hmm.
asking people about, whether they're GLBT plus, right? Q.
Yeah.
So it's more about what is your process for having an inclusive lab, right? So do you like when you look at resumes, right? Not all like someone from an indigenous background or another background that's underrepresented in science, they might not have like the same CV, but they might be, teaching within their own like tribe or something like that's not the typical thing, but is still like productive in their
Yeah.
like community, right?
Right,
So
right.
you need to kind of like not discount that and kind of like have a more equitable say about how you look at CVs. You need to promote like where you post your jobs, right? So like
Yeah. True.
posting on as many wide open spots and with flexible language, right? So well, a lot of stuff, whether it's, if people have kids, they need to leave the lab by like 4:35 or whatever, right?
Hmm.
So, but if you're like saying in your job posting, you need to work like 9 to 7 or whatever, like our old institution at a minimum, like
Now,
you've just like knocked people out, right?
I remember from our previous institution, there were certain PIs who would not be okay if they found out that a postdoc in the lab was having another kid or something.
Oh yeah.
And that terrifies me. Like that is not the environment that
Yeah.
we should be in. But it is what it is, you know?
Yeah.
And that's terrifying. You just reminded me of something. for those that are applying to grad school and are going through interviews, in-person interviews for or online interviews, I guess, for grad school, uh, every PI or most PIs will always ask at the very end, "Do you have any questions for me?" And that's the important part. You
Mhm.
always have to ask a good question. Always ask a question, and don't choose a basic ass question like, "Why did you choose this institution?"
Mhm.
No. The question I always ask, and it always shook them a little because they're like, "Whoa, like no one's ever asked me that." Is or how are you being inclusive with your lab? Or I would ask them, as a department head, how are you trying to diversify, or how are you being inclusive
Mhm.
with the department? Or are there any LGBT plus organizations in this institution? Why not? Or have you done anything to promote this organization? And that's when I think sometimes it can rock the boat where they're like, oh my gosh, like you're calling us out. But I mean, someone has to bring it up, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm tempted to answer for myself right now, but like
Do it,
because
do
we
it.
know because like part of it was like in even all the job applications that for these PI positions, there's usually a one-page diversity statement again to state like what you've done, right? And so like
Yeah.
obviously I've had the chance to mentor a lot of people from diverse backgrounds.
Mhm.
Um, from what I've been like specific stuff, I've done like some volunteering and science communication to like marginalized like high schools and elementary schools so that like kids from those schools get to see like these science demos and stuff. And that was kind of
Yeah.
PhD. I've tried to like showcase like women in science in like a nano symposium for Canadian neuroscience. It didn't get accepted, but anyways, the point is just listing all these things here. When I just started, like my first thing, I like spent like all those like in this lab we whatever,
Yeah.
like so like support all
Yeah.
all these, right? So like that's I put that on like both my doors, and then now
Hmm.
like my colleagues are like, oh, can I have a copy of that, and like putting it on their doors, right?
Hmm.
So that these are small things, but like at the end of the and then at the end of the day is like of course there's workshops and seminars to
Yeah.
learn about microaggressions, all these other things so that we're
Hmm.
aware, unconscious bias training, because I don't pretend, like I tell my students like there'll be missteps, right? Like but like
Hmm.
again, I'm sort of one of these things like I'm not it's not the end of the world if I made a statement that is problematic. It's the end of the world if I choose to not see it as problematic and
Yeah.
and keep saying it, right? So like
Right.
I just knowing that like there's a system in place that like I was raised in, that like you know missteps can happen. I should be
Right.
doing my best to essentially like learn and understand why these are problematic
Right.
or concerning things to say and keep going.
One of my regrets in my old lab was that there were times where the PI would like say something that's a microaggression,
Mm,
and I would not speak up on it because I was afraid of getting in trouble. They often turned it on me to somehow antagonize me. But I remember this is when we're still in the same lab space, and I often just like left my phone, my laptops out on my desk, and PI always warned me, um, make sure you hide your stuff, because there was an incident where someone came in and would just go to each floor and just take people's belongings, and they would hide in the stairway. And the way that they described that person was, yeah, there was this one time this African American man came in and he would steal people's belongings. He blended in because he was actually dressed nice, and that's that. Yeah, so that was
that
a
actually part.
actually, yeah,
Oh my
actually
God.
was the key word. It shocked me, but I didn't say anything for several reasons. I just started working in that lab. My viewpoint at the time was, okay, they're the boss. I am the underling. I don't talk back. And maybe it's part of my culture too, where you just don't argue. You don't talk back to anyone older than you. So
Mhm.
I didn't say anything, but I remember just like thinking, wow. And also, you have one of your other trainees is African American. So like,
Yeah.
wow.
But I mean, the
So
city itself, 30%, right? These things are pervasive, and it's just kind of like in that power dynamic, what do you say, right? Like, what do you mean by actually? And then
yeah.
she flips it on you, and then
Yeah, and I think that
I
was
mean,
another
yeah, I had the
red
same
flag
thing.
that.
well, I'm not gonna like name names, but certain bosses that like literally said certain terms, and it's like, well, what do I do, right? Like again,
Hmm.
especially once you get to that postdoc stage,
Hmm.
you are like, again, it's publications and that reference letter, right? And you don't
Yep,
like
yep.
the system's designed that you don't want to rock the boat. And so
Hmm.
I guess my question is like, how can we develop ways, right? Because everyone's like afraid, like not like people are like, oh, I'm afraid of being canceled or fired or whatever. But like, how can
Hmm.
if people can we have genuine conversations about
Yeah,
moving, you know, like taking obviously there's stuff that's extreme, whether it's sexual harassment or whatever, that needs to be like called out,
right.
person needs to be lose a job or charged or whatever.
Which
But
I
like
found out is actually it happens a lot in labs.
it unfortunately it does. And it's another friggin' secret because again, you're dealing with like, you know, typical male perpetrators, right? And
Hmm.
they're aging and they're always have people in the lab that are like 20, 30 years old. And it's a power it's a hierarchy, right? It's a power structure the way it's set up, like even from like postdoc, grad student, tech, whatever, undergrad.
Hmm.
So like it can breed like in certain people, right? This I don't know if what it is in the boss, like entitlement or whatever, or like I don't know how it breeds this like
For sure,
person that
yeah.
leans towards that, but it's definitely like the stories I've heard from women in science, like a lot of them have stories, right? And like, yeah, we have to believe them and not like these people are still working or whatever. Like
Hmm.
there are like they can get cut off from like NIH grants and stuff like that. And but again, you know, anyway, I'm talking about more like kind of like
Yeah,
microaggressions,
yeah.
like smaller stuff that like maybe if people are like able to grow can identify and be like, you know what, you know, even if it was like a quote unquote like
Hmm.
I don't like using this term, but like a subordinate or whatever, your employee,
Yeah.
who points it out, it's like, can we still we're all still adults here, right? Like
Hmm.
can someone learn and from something like that? But yeah,
For
you're totally
sure.
right. The sexual harassment.
Maybe it comes from a place of naivety. But I
Mm,
really didn't know that that was a thing until I started doing like motherfucking tea on my Instagram story. And people, I received like probably about 100 submissions, and I want to say 20% of them deal
mm.
with sexual harassment.
Is it usually the PI or someone else in the lab?
Someone else.
Oh,
They'll say
okay.
like,
So it's
yeah,
not
it's like,
PI.
oh, like this person got fired for
Okay.
sexual harassment, or this person is
Yeah.
being investigated for, or
Yeah.
I knew someone in this other lab happened years
Okay.
ago. You know, from
Yeah.
the outside, when I applied as a research tech, I really thought research was this. It's a happy place.
Mhm.
It's fun, and everyone loves research. But being in it for a while, like you begin to see like cracks a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's with every workplace. You know, every workplace is not all rainbows and butterflies. There's a lot of drama. There's a lot of stress, tension that goes on, and sexual harassment. Anyone can be. What's the word I'm looking for? Anyone can be a
A
sexual
victim
harasser.
or a harasser. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because you hear stories of like Jared, the
Yeah.
subway guy. You know about that story, right?
Wasn't it pedophilia? Like even me coming here to this department,
Yeah.
it's in the new it's been published, but there was a PI that like had child porn on his like computer and he got fired and everything and it was all on the news here. But nobody no like he has lab equipment, but nobody wants to touch it because it's got
It's
like bad
tainted.
it's tainted, right?
It has
Like
bad juju. Oh my
exactly.
God.
Yeah, so like
What?
it's yeah, like this stuff. I mean, I think most workplaces, right, there's a certain percentage of this stuff. I don't know about academia per se. I'd say on the like colleague side, right, is like when you're undergrad and everything's fun and you're like there's
Hmm.
lots of jokes flying around, and then even in grad school there's a lot of jokes. Then there's
Yeah.
this like morphing to postdoc where it becomes more like, oh, I gotta get like a job after this, right?
Yeah.
And there's this, I remember consciously when I like in during my PhD in Ottawa, um, it like we joked a lot and
Yeah.
probably like with as with any jokes, not all of them are in great taste, right? So like but like I remember consciously being like in my postdoc, I can't like.
Yeah, I kind of sense that too. As you climb up like the academic ladder, there is obviously a bigger sense of
Mhm.
professionalism. I think because of my position, obviously like I guess you can say I'm on the bottom of the totem pole. I can make a lot of jokes, dumb jokes on Twitter and get away with it because I guess, nothing to lose, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you watch Love Is Blind, by the way?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Season three.
Yeah, yeah. We just got caught up. What a twist.
Who's your favorite couple?
So it's weird because I liked Alexa and Brennan for a while,
Uh-huh.
but like I just don't know how what I feel like her family and friends seem pretty like kind of rude to Brennan kind of thing a bit. Like I
Hmm.
don't know, but you never know what they like show and stuff.
Right.
People think like who is it, Matt and
Colleen.
Colleen, they think like Matt clearly has a drinking problem and like an anger problem, but like I
Yeah.
kind of creeped all their Instagrams. It's like a year later and it still seems like they're together. So like I don't know how warranted all the like pray for Colleen type thing is.
You
At
know,
first,
maybe
yeah.
maybe giving them benefit of the doubt, maybe
Yeah.
they're able to work things through. I feel like
Hmm.
with the relationships, it goes downhill with a
Yeah,
problem, or you overcome that problem together, and
for
that
sure.
relationship only becomes stronger.
For sure. Did you though the dichotomy of that strip club scene? Like, so the boys are all like just drinking, talking at a bar, talking about their families, and
Uh-huh.
the ladies were all at like a male strip club, and there was like
Yeah.
it was a little bit gratuitous with this with the crotch shots I found. I was like, whoa, like this is
I'm not gonna lie.
I
I
want to hear this reaction. Did you
no,
miss
no,
that?
no. There's for a part, I want to say like most of season three,
Yeah.
I'm watching it while I'm quantifying data. And so like
Okay.
I'm listening, but I'm not seeing it, you know?
Darian, I would love to know, like, especially from your perspective,
Yeah.
the dichotomy of like alternating between these like pretty like I mean they do gratuitous like booty shots for women, so
Yeah.
like it's probably comparable, but like I had never like seen it that gratuitous like
Oh.
on like a television show. And then it would flip to the dudes and they're just like, oh, this is how I feel, and they're just like having a boring like bachelor party. I mean, pretty interesting. The word is though at the like reunion the guys like did an off-camera bachelor thing that was
Oh,
apparently,
yeah.
and this is where there was like some, who
Between
was it?
Cole and Zayn.
Cole, yeah, exactly. So like we don't, and still we don't really know because the guys either held it together or didn't
Mm,
go out. Some of them didn't go to that. I don't know. Because here's the thing. I still think Cole like has is problematic and has like a lot of
are you bipolar? That
yeah,
question.
yeah, yeah.
Oh
Like
my
even like
gosh.
don't get me wrong, and like so like people are kind of piling on Zaynab, and like I understand to an extent, but I also understand a lot of people are sensitive about like eating and stuff like that, and I could
Hmm.
see how she could interpret it like you saw the
Yeah.
post clip right after
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
reunion, right? So like it's usually always a two-way street, but like
Yeah.
Cole's still like I'm
What
giving
what
him some
I
credit.
I can relate to Zaynab.
Yeah,
Not that I agree with her, but I can relate
yeah.
to her because when you feel insecure about something,
Hmm.
whatever comes out of the other person's mouth,
Yeah.
you think that they're gonna poke in on your insecurity.
Yeah.
And I say that because in my previous lab, there are a lot of things I was insecure about. And every comment that my
Yeah.
PI made, I took it directly. Like they're criticizing me on this when looking back on it, maybe they weren't criticizing me on that. Maybe in the moment I just felt insecure on something, and I kept it with that anger with me for so long, but it was just a misunderstanding. You know, maybe the
Yeah.
intention wasn't to do that.
Yeah.
But anyway, we have 10 minutes left, and I actually got a confocal reservation soon.
Oh, dude, you're
And
still working hard. Okay.
yeah. Okay, so Paul, thank you so much for being a
No
guest on
problem.
this episode. Do you have any advice for the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, so advice, you don't have to know what you want to do right away. So we didn't really talk about it here, but like out of high school, I didn't do any of my sciences. I
Mm-hmm.
I did an arts degree first in criminology, thinking I'd be a cop. I actually, after a 4-year arts degree in criminology, I worked for the Ottawa Police as a civilian. I didn't like the subculture. It wasn't, the people that they were hiring as cops just weren't like, I didn't feel I fit the profile. And, maybe it would have been better if I did become a cop. But anyways, I fell in love with science like later in life, like at like 23, went back to high school after my arts degree, took calculus, algebra, chemistry, then did a BSc in integrated science, thinking I would do like forensic science and just work in like a Royal Canadian Mounted Police lab and do forensics. But when it came time to do my independent project, got into a Parkinson's lab. Supervisor that then vouched for me there to do grad school, did that. The point is it's never too late to like change careers,
for sure,
go back. And that's my piece of advice.
Thank you so much. I know that like people around my age, there's this need or this internal race of we need to get to the finish line now. We need to settle down now. We don't have time to go back to school. And no, that's not true at all. Thank you for sharing your story. Hey, I know people who do PhDs at a later age in life, and
for sure,
I might join that list.
Come up here to Winnipeg.
I'm gonna join your lab. Imagine if I joined your lab.
That we didn't talk about, but the stipends in Canada are real low, man. I mean, we have universal healthcare, although our system is like kind of falling apart because of COVID. It was falling apart before COVID, but like our stipends are not what it is. But if you join my lab, you would be paid according to your experience, which is pretty high.
I think the stipend at my current institution is, I want to say 34K USD.
Yeah, I feel like so you're gonna cry. But so granted that, do you pay tuition if you're
no,
PhD?
no.
Okay,
no,
yeah.
no.
So like it's wild here. So not only do they pay tuition, which is only like $5,000 a year or something like that for the first 2 years, and then it's like $500 a year. But stipends start at like 18,000 Canadian. So like that's like, yeah, you can't
Fuck
even.
No, baby.
It's wild. And here's the thing: rightfully, there's a whole push for Parliament to raise graduate stipends.
Yeah,
which I'm all for.
Is that even livable? 18K?
Yeah. But the problem is like if we raise those stipends, who's paying, right? Because our startups are still super low, and our federal grants from CIHR and NSERC are super low. So all boats need to raise, right? So like it's just I don't know what's gonna happen, how they're gonna like implement this, because they might just do like, oh, we'll put out more like competitive fellowships, but then like you have grad students that win these fellowships that are getting 40 a year, and then you have the people who didn't win the fellowship making 18. So it's like, is that equitable, right? Like don't get me wrong, they're competitive fellowships, but like, can we have something a little bit closer than that, right? So I don't know.
This is an interesting conversation.
For
Paul,
sure.
If you're not busy in a couple of weeks, I would love to have you back on.
For sure.
Not a promise, but I have a long list of people that I would love to have on and I like the idea that I'm gonna bring on people that were already on the podcast, and it's like a catch up, like, hello everyone, welcome to episode 392 of Scientifically Speaking. Remember Paul from episode 20, whatever. So I think I would love to catch up with you, and also
because we didn't even touch base about like Simone and Noelle and Mariah.
I know it's crazy to know that like I've known you that long before they were born.
Yeah,
isn't that crazy?
Which is wild. Yeah.
Our friendship is older than your children.
Older than kids, yeah. So that officially makes you Uncle Darian to them.
I know. I am a gunkle. Finally, I'm a gunkle. You know what a gunkle is, right?
I'll take a guess.
Go for it. It.
So like, because in like gay communities, sometimes you call each other girl or whatever, right? So is it kind of like girl uncle because you're gay, or gay uncle?
Gay uncle. There you go. Imagine if I'm like, no, it means green uncle. I mean, I'm environmentally friendly.
Yeah.
this is where I cancel you.
I feel I was in the ballpark.
Yeah, anyways. You are.
Okay.
All right, Paul, man. Thank you so much for thank you so much for being on this episode. I really enjoyed catching up with you. And everyone, I hope you have a great day.